Okay, now let's get down to business. As you may have seen because of the title, Miraculous Ladybug in my eyes has become nearly irredeemable. I am extremely unhappy with the direction that it has taken, and it will be very hard to save it. To keep me from going into a full-on rant, I've narrowed my criticisms to 3 categories: irrational character alterations, the repetitious episode format, and the unnecessary amount of filler. To me, these are the 3 principal things that I feel have negatively impacted the show the most. And without further ado, let's get into it. Number 1. They changed the characters' personalities to fit the narrative. First and foremost, this should never have to happen in a show. If the show writers have to alter a character's personality to feel the story that they're trying to tell, then either they have not developed that character enough, or they have chosen to tell a story that has been poorly planned and they didn't take everything into account like they should have. There are various instances of this throughout the show, and I'm going to single out a couple big ones that really made my gears turn. The first instance of this was the one and only Marinette Dupain-Cheng. There are probably a couple of you that already know what I'm talking about, but I'll explain for those who don't. In seasons 1 and 2, Marinette was kind of a mess around Adrien, but it was all in moderation. But then, season 3 came along. Oh god. You've probably noticed how I didn't react to any of the episodes to season 3. There's a reason for that. Unless you wanted to hear me bang my head on my desk for 21 to 23 minutes, then I guess that you missed out. But trust me, I have so much to say about the season as a whole that I could not really fit into a reaction video, and I wanted to really let the season marinate in my head before I criticized it. Alright, back to Marinette. There are a couple of episodes where they made her seem creepy. Let's start with a smaller example. In Oni-chan, Zag literally wrote in the script for Marinette to try to break into Adrien's house because Lila was there. Like, what were they thinking? And the firefighter enables her? Like, what? Just because Lila was there, it doesn't mean that it makes it okay to break into someone's home. Marinette is supposed to be this confident, headstrong character who gets a little giggly around her crush. Everybody does. But boy, did they really push that last part to the extreme with this episode. Yes, Lila is bad news, and Marinette knows it, but there is something that Zag was missing when they wrote this episode. During the end of Chameleon, Adrien directly expressed to Marinette that he knew that Lila was a liar. Of all of the people in the show, why wouldn't she have taken his word for it? If she likes him so much, why didn't she trust him enough to handle it on his own? Which, by the way, Adrien did do in Ladybug. You would think that Marinette would remember something like that, but apparently not. The whole situation with Marinette's attempt to break into the Grest mansion is a mess. And this isn't the only time that Zag chooses to completely decimate Marinette's minimal character development. Let's discuss the embarrassment that is Puppeteer 2. When this episode first aired, I could have sworn that the air felt thicker due to the amount of secondhand embarrassment that I felt emanating from every single Miraculous Ladybug fan in existence. As I witnessed the scene unfold, my face held the expression that one would make if they were to down an entire gallon of lemon juice in one sitting. I was cringing so hard. The fact that they made Marinette attempt to kiss a statue of her crush is creepy. But my bigger question is, why does it seem like Zag set out to embarrass Marinette as much as humanly possible by making her do things that she would never do? The confident, determined, and bubbly girl that we all got to know got pushed to the side for the sake of storytelling. And the fact that they made Adrien think that it would be a good idea to act like a statue as a joke and stay that way while she is ranting about how much she wants him makes me cringe so hard. Why didn't he cut in? Why did Marinette think that attempting to kiss a statue was a good idea? You know, the reason why this scene was so uncomfortable is because it was very out of place. The show could have gone without the scene entirely, and it really made Marinette's relationship with Adrien go backwards. Every time we see them together, something happens that baits us into thinking that maybe, just maybe, their relationship is progressing, or Marinette is getting more comfortable around him, but it only lasts for that episode. At the start of every episode where the plot is centered around them being together, it always feels like we are starting over, and it's frustrating. Is this their attempt at a slow burn romance? Because I assure you, this isn't a slow burn romance. And you know, as they are going home in his car, and he finally tells her that he likes someone else, she seems crushed. Rightfully so. But then, the next time that we see her with Adrian, she is back to being all over him. Why did Zach completely disregard that whole moment? Adrian expresses to her that he likes someone else, and then instead of laying off like she should have, we go back to obsessive Marinette again. The show just refuses to maintain any plot continuity, and it makes me so sad that any potential character development that they may have as a pair seems to be disregarded. My argument is starting to bleed into the point of my next topic, so we're going to be moving on to my second main criticism. Number 2. Miraculous Ladybug's repetitious episode format. Near the end of my previous point, I was beginning to discuss my frustration with the show's tendency to disregard character development for the sake of plot. The main reason for this is because of the episode format that they are maintaining. Every single episode in the show follows this format, save for the finales of seasons 2 and 3, but they still somewhat do. Each episode goes a little bit like this. We start the episode with the main characters that will be important to the plotline. Then, the episode begins to delve into the main task that will ultimately come to a conclusion by the end. We meet the person that will become akumatized. Note, they are always involved with the task in some way. The main characters begin to frustrate / sadden the future Akuma, and cue Hawkmoth saying something along the lines of, "Whoa! I said strong negative emotion." Next, the saddening / maddening of the Akuma comes to a head and they run off. Cue akumatization sequence! The other main characters putz around for a couple more minutes until BOOM! Whoa! I am the evil Akuma and I will insert over-dramatized solution to alleviating the thing or eliminating the person who made them an Akuma in the first place. Then, Marinette and Adrian make some really stupid excuse to get away that everyone always seems to go along with for some reason. Cue respective transformation sequences. And then they go fight the Akuma for pretty much the rest of the episode. They defeat the Akuma, bye-bye little butterfly, pound it, and then Hawkmoth storms out of his lair to go pout in his room. Finally, the episode comes to a close where the akumatized person gets reassured by the main characters, they all hug and become BFFs, and I don't know why, but they always laugh, show ending CG, and then roll credits. If that isn't the gist of every single Miraculous Ladybug episode, then I'm going to just pack my bags and delete my channel because I've watched the entire show twice, and you should bet your bottom dollar that I've thought this out as thoroughly as one can. Anyway, now that I've explained the format itself, I'm going to explain why it doesn't work anymore. By the end of the second season of any good show, the plot is already well on its way from leaving the fluffy goodness of the first season to beginning to flesh out the story and dive deeper into the show's lore. It begins to become more serious and intense, especially when it comes to a show in the superhero genre like Miraculous Ladybug. The show has tried to do this, but the reason why they have not been successful is because it seems like they are not willing to fully commit to leaving the fluffiness behind. By continuing to use the format where the conflict is resolved in the same episode, it hinders the show from creating a tense conflict that keeps the audience on the edge of their seats. It's frustrating for the audience because the show isn't as fleshed out as it should be at this point. SAG is sacrificing the quality of their story in order to create new, smaller conflicts for each episode that they put out. As I said before, the show has developed a tendency to leave out parts of one or multiple characters' development and personalities for their narrative, and if they just disregarded the format that they are trying to upkeep, then they wouldn't have to do this anymore. Instead of trying to think of a new conflict per episode, why don't they just focus on Marinette and Adrian and begin to explore and flesh out their story? Because this is their show. Not Max's, not Kim's, not Aurore's, not Mr. Damocles's, or anyone else's but theirs. I mean, did we really need a Puppeteer 2, a Gamer 2.0, a Reflect All, and a Stormy Weather 2? Like, come on. Stormy Weather 2 wasn't even an episode. It was literally 21 minutes and 44 seconds of recap. They're running out of ideas. In 3 seasons of Miraculous Ladybug, it doesn't feel like the main pair have gotten anywhere. And don't even get me started on how it seems like they will never even get close to defeating Hawkmoth anytime soon. The show has begun to sprinkle in tidbits of lore every now and then, with Mayura showing up, or they find some ancient artifact connected to the Miraculous, or Lila makes a sinister appearance for like 2 seconds, but that's it. Where's the treacherous journey to a distant land that lasts over 2 or 3 episodes? We're on the way to test the strength of Marinette and Adrian's relationship to the limit, and they begin to understand one another on a whole new level. To be honest, I can name multiple Miraculous Ladybug fanfictions that do this, and let me tell you, if I were able to replace the show's plot with any of these fanfictions universes instead, Miraculous Ladybug would be one of the most influential shows on the planet. These authors expand the universe, they build tension, they test Adrian and Marinette's relationship, and they change and become better versions of themselves along the way. Oh, and guess what? All of them focus on 1 or 2 ongoing Akumas only, and Hawkmoth himself as the villain, like the actual show should be doing by now. I'm going to include some of my favorites in the description below, because if you're feeling as starved for actual good quality MO content as I am, these will definitely help. In conclusion, Miraculous Ladybug is still wavering between fleshing out its story and remaining in its fluff phase instead of committing to moving along the story. It's really starting to spiral out of control, and the characters and plot are starting to really suffer because of it. I fear for the future of ML if it continues to remain on the path that it's currently on. Now, let's move on to my last point. Number 3, too much filler. This point goes hand in hand with my previous point, because it has a lot to do with the fluff phase that I've been talking about. To begin, I'm going to provide a list of episodes that I feel could be completely eliminated from the show and leave the story intact. I'm only focusing on seasons 2 and 3 because season 1 is supposed to be a little fluffy. Here's my list. Number 1, Gigantitan. The only thing that was somewhat interesting that came out of Gigantitan was this screenshot. That's it. Number 2, the gorilla. Because yes, there is a Ladrian moment, and some would say that it shows that Adrian's dad isn't a monster, but once again, that last fact is thrown out the window when we see what happens if he actually finds out that Adrian is Chat Noir. Number 3, Reverser. Because they literally take Mark out of the show, so sadly his role is not relevant, and it makes me sad they wrote him out, because he was a really cool character, and I really wish that he would have stayed in Madame Boustier's class. Number 4, Ana Maestro, because this episode was definitely fan service, and an excuse for Zag to put Thomas into the show. Number 5, Gamer 2.0, because while this episode is fun, it doesn't add any substance to the show. Number 6, Chris Master, because again, no substance, but can we stop for a second? Because I have to ask this. The animation in this particular episode is absolutely gorgeous, but why did Zag choose to waste it on Chris Master? Why not on a more influential episode, like Bafana? Anyway, back to the list. Number 7, The Puppeteer 2. I have already discussed this episode a lot, but the reason why I am taking it out is because we don't need to see a minor villain akumatized again. It's just lazy. The only villain that I am okay with coming back is Volpina, because she actually is a challenge to the Miraculous team, unlike most others. Number 8, Stormy Weather 2. Like I said before, this episode is literally just recap, and that's unacceptable. Number 9, Reflect All. Some could argue that it's important because it starts to really introduce sentient monsters, but I think that Feast does a much better job of explaining them. And finally, please don't hate me, Chat Blanc. I know, I can already hear you rushing to the comments and ripping me to shreds, but let me explain. This episode literally had no impact on the show whatsoever. It was just an alternate timeline that didn't go anywhere, and I am fully convinced that they added this episode for fan service. Plus, I hated how they threw out all hope that the gorilla gave us about the possibility of Gabriel still caring for Adrian if he were to find out his son's identity. I mean, Gabriel was literally begging for Adrian to transform as he was falling because he did not want to watch his son die, and then in Chat Blanc he suddenly decides to use his own son as a weapon, not caring for his well-being at all? What? Anyway, all of these episodes can be eliminated without any repercussions, and I feel like these specific episodes are hindering the natural progression that the show is attempting to have, which is minimal in the first place. Also, I wish that Zag didn't decide to give Madame Boustier's entire class Miraculous, because it takes away from the show being about Ladybug and Cat Noir. I will say, Alia, Nino, and Chloe having Miraculouses was a fun idea at first, because it created a cool little team of the main four, plus Chloe, and I loved their dynamic. But then the show decided to pass out the Miraculouses like candy at Halloween, and it felt like owning a Miraculous wasn't special anymore. I mean, I love all their designs, I think it's great, but I wish that they would have left the 5 alone. To tie this back to my original point, all of these new heroes feel like filler to me. The time that the show could be spending to focus on Adrien and Marinette are spent introducing more and more miraculous jewels, and I feel like the show is focusing on too many extra things. This ties back to my previous points, because not only do most of these episodes feel out of place, but they are side plots that have resulted from Zag still trying to follow ML's episode format. This show had so much potential. It really did. That's why so many of us fell in love with it in the first place. You can argue that some of my expectations are too high for a show with a rating of TVG. But the reason why I am making this video is because I care about this show a lot, and I really don't want it to end in flames like I've seen others do. There are so many fans like me that aren't the target audience and have been touched by this show, and I am worried about the direction that I'm seeing it take. If we aren't open about the show's flaws, then how are we going to keep the show from spiraling out of control? I know that there are going to be a group of you that will not agree with all of my points, and that's okay. These are all based on my own observations and interpretations, and if you guys have any of your own criticisms about the show, feel free to share them in the comments. Thank you for your willingness to listen to what I have to say, and I will see you all later. Goodbye!